Hey there, this is my chemical waste release inventory report focusing on the Charleston, South Carolina region using the zip code 29407. I'll walk you through the major pollution sources in the area, what chemicals they are releasing, where it's going, and what it means for public health. This is based on EPA data and toxicology profiles and is built to help guide environmental policy or community awareness. Here's the basic snapshot. Within 50 miles of 29407, the EPA's TRI data shows 86 facilities putting out toxic releases. They've reported 150 different chemicals and they've submitted nearly 1,200 forms over the last 3 years. This gives us a solid base to see what's going on in the air, water, and land around Charleston. These are the biggest contributors to toxic waste in the region. Nucor steel tops the list by a huge margin, followed by Capstone paper and cross-generating station. The chart shows how much waste they release and where it's going: air, land, water, or off-site. Most of it's either released directly into the environment or transferred elsewhere for treatment or disposal. Methanol and sulfuric acid make up the biggest chunk of what's going into the air. Combined, they're over 40% of total air emissions. This matters because both are respiratory irritants, and long-term exposure can lead to more serious health problems. The total air releases are nearly 14 million pounds, which means this is something the community needs to pay attention to. When it comes to water, manganese and cobalt dominate the releases. Manganese alone is over 40%. These metals don't just disappear, they settle into sediment, enter the food chain, and can impact both aquatic life and drinking water safety. The total amount is lower than air releases, but it's still over half a million pounds dumped into the water systems. Land disposal is where heavy metals really show up. Barium and lead make up nearly half of everything going into the soil. That's a big deal because lead especially doesn't break down. It sticks around, contaminates groundwater, and builds up in plants and animals. Over 6 million pounds of waste were dumped or buried, and that could pose serious risks long term for the community. To dig into the human health impact side, I picked the top two chemicals from each category: air, water, and land. These are the ones released in the highest amounts, so they're the most relevant for people living near these facilities. The next few slides will break down what each of them does to the body short and long term. Methanol is a big one in the air around Charleston. Breathing it in short term can give you headaches, dizziness, or make you feel sick. If someone's exposed long enough or at high enough levels, it can mess with their vision or even cause nerve damage. It's dangerous in industrial settings, but even more concerning when it's being released this much into the air. Sulfuric acid in the air shows up as acid aerosols, which can hit the lungs really hard. Short-term exposure causes burning in your nose and throat, and if you breathe it in over time, it can lead to bronchitis or worse. Workers exposed to this stuff for years have even shown signs of increased cancer risk. It's bad news for people living near industrial plants without clean air protections. Manganese sounds harmless, but too much of it, especially in water, can seriously affect brain function. It has been linked to a condition called manganism, which mimics Parkinson's disease. Short-term exposure usually just irritates the lungs, but the big worry is it's slowly building up in people over time, especially through water systems or fish that absorb it. Cobalt doesn't just show up in batteries, it's a pollutant too. In water, it can irritate the eyes and trigger asthma-like issues if it becomes airborne during evaporation or mist. Long-term exposure can mess with the heart and lungs, and it's listed as possible cancer risk. People with sensitive skin or breathing problems are especially at risk. Barium's mostly a problem when it's dumped on land. If it gets into the soil, it can make its way into drinking water. In the short term, exposure can cause muscle and stomach problems and trouble breathing. Over time, it may lead to kidney issues and a rise in blood pressure. Areas near waste sites or poorly managed landfills are most at risk. Lead is one of the most toxic metals out there and it doesn't go away. Even small amounts in soil can cause major problems, especially for kids. It messes with brain development, can lead to lifelong learning issues, and build up in bones and organs over time. For adults, it hits the kidneys and nervous system hard. It's bad news no matter how much you look at it. Based on these chemicals, the Charleston area faces some serious public health concerns. The biggest ones are neurological problems from metals like lead and manganese, and respiratory damage from sulfuric acid and cobalt. People could also be drinking contaminated water if runoff isn't properly contained. Kids, the elderly, and people with asthma or other conditions are going to feel it the most. This isn't just academic or theoretical speculation. This data shows what's actually happening around us. These pollutants aren't staying inside factories, they're hitting air, water, and soil, and that means people are living with the effects. Lawmakers can use this info to target the worst offenders, tighten regulations, and invest in health protections for affected communities. I pulled all this data straight from the EPA's toxics tracker using the 29407 zip code in a 50-mile range. Then I found the top chemicals by how much was released and looked them up in the official toxicology reports from the ATSDR. Everything here is based on real numbers, not estimates or guesses, just what's actually happening on the ground. To wrap it up, this region has a heavy industrial footprint. We're looking at 86 facilities dumping more than 20 million pounds of waste into the environment, with methanol in the air, metals in the water and soil, and chronic exposure risk for the public. These chemicals aren't harmless, they've got real health consequences to the local community. Based on the data, the area could really benefit from more monitoring, especially around those top three facilities. We also need better enforcement of reporting rules and stronger penalties for violations. Cleanup efforts should focus where the releases are highest, and people living nearby need clear, honest info about what they're being exposed to. Here are the sources used. Everything is from official federal or global health agencies. The World Health Organization article gives extra context on how dangerous lead is worldwide, especially for kids.